for you.
Okay, if I could have your attention. Oh, big crowd tonight. It's great. No, really though, I really thank you all for coming. This is so exciting. It's so weird to be on this end of the table, so to speak. But I'm really excited. It's so nice to see so many supporters and interested people in here, and yeah, we've got two fantastic candidates. I'm obviously not biased, but I may or may not have ran with both of them last year. So two great guys, and I'm really excited to hear what they have to say tonight, and excited for all of you to have that opportunity as well. I have to just say thank you so much to our elections chair, Carrie Rosenheimer, and also Judicial Chair, J.R. Cole, for doing just such a fantastic job. No, they really do. They put this all together tonight. Carrie's been working so hard trying to get the vote out, and I think we're going to have a great turnout on Thursday, especially with the help of all of you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to let these two gentlemen know how tonight's going to go down. And this should be fun, it should be enjoyable, and I hope that everyone learns a lot.
Hi guys, welcome. Thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. Candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement before the debate and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Candidates will have a maximum of 1 minute per response. In order to answer all of the questions, however, it is encouraged to keep responses brief but to the point. Opposing candidates will have the option of doing a 30-second rebuttal. Members of the audience may submit questions to the panel throughout the debate. If the question is deemed valuable, we will ask it on your behalf. Questions can be submitted in written form on a sheet in the back of the room, or to Alex Zimmerman. He's somewhere. Yep, Alex is our question man right back there. They must be submitted by 8 p.m. and at 8 p.m. we'll begin asking some of the audience questions. If there's time at the end of the debate, candidates will have the opportunity to ask questions of each other. Do you guys understand the rules and everything?
Yeah, sounds good.
And I think, sorry, Carrie. And we want to start trying to do that at 8 p.m. But if you're more comfortable, we will have the mic circulating around. We'll try to anyway, depending on how much time we have. So if you want to actually ask your question, but if not, you can do it in written form as well, and we'll try and get to it. Okay.
I'm going to kick it over to my favorite, I guess, office mate, JR. JR, will you like to begin?
Sure. So as determined by coin flip, James, you get the first opening statement. 2 minutes.
Can we go right now?
Yep.
Whenever you start.
How's everyone doing tonight? Yeah, pretty good? Yeah, here we go. I've never done one of these before, so.
The clock is running.
Oh, sorry. All right. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. First off, I'd like to thank the moderators and everyone in the audience for attending tonight. And I'm going to get right down to the nitty-gritty. John and I are here debating our positions running for Student Government Board presidency. We both have very distinct approaches for how we'd like to serve the student body, as well as different opinions on many central issues on campus. John's platform is fragmentary and does not represent the depth needed to be successful as president. While he would like to place more accountability on SGB, he also aims to repair his own newspaper distribution initiative from the past year. And his last goal is simply to instate 2 public office hours per week for board members. These objectives are not focused on the student body. I, on the other hand, have a more complete vision for how I'd like to serve the student body, which emphasizes approachability. In order to create and foster more meaningful relationships between SGB board members and other student leaders, I'd like to form an SGB liaison system and provide leadership summits during the fall and spring semesters. Not only do I wish to involve leaders on campus, but I want to start holding monthly campus hall meetings that would be open to all students. These meetings would provide an opportunity for students to connect to SGB board members and discuss projects or issues that either party is working on. Like I said, my goal as president is to facilitate a more approachable SGB board, which will lead to a better understanding of our board's function and more engagement from student organizations. I've acquired my vision after holding many leadership positions on campus with various student groups and for many achievements that I've had as a SGB board member. If elected to president, I aim to use these experiences to govern fairly and effectively. Thank you.
Do I get a rebuttal or do I just do my opening statement?
There is no rebuttal during opening statements. You may give your opening statement.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Hazley. I'm a senior majoring in history and philosophy. And after that lovely introduction by James, I'll offer this as an opening statement. My vision for the Student Government Board is hardly fragmentary. It is, in fact, I believe, more accessible-oriented than James's 3 initiatives. I would require all of my board members and myself to hold open office hours in public places like Towers Lobby or in front of the Union. Students that aren't necessarily coming to our meetings can just walk up to us, share their ideas with us, and that way we can incorporate a broader student perspective than the one that we usually get just here at public meetings. I'd also like to establish or kind of reform the current liaison program that we have at SGB. We had about $100,000 in rollover in the Student Activities Fund every year. That's $100,000 students were paying into this account that did not get returned to them from Student Government Board, with tuition just, hiking every year. I really think SGB should be doing more to ease this financial burden on students, and that's why I want board members going to student organization meetings and sharing their real experiences with the allocations process. Sharing the things that students wouldn't otherwise know, sharing the things that students need to know before they submit these allocations requests, and we can get more of this money out in the students' hands because that's where it belongs. And lastly, James said that the readership program was my initiative. It wasn't. It was actually the initiative of past presidents Charlie Shull and current president Molly Stieber. But I do think the distribution process of this program does need reform because it currently is catering to the needs of not just undergraduate students, not just the people paying for it, but really anyone who happens to walk by these kiosks. By bringing in newspaper dispenser systems, we can make sure that all of these papers are actually going back to the hands of the students who are paying for them and not just being freely thrown away to basically anyone who wants to pick them up, anyone who couldn't, didn't happen to pay for them. With that said, we are wearing each other's shirts. We realize this. We planned on it. It's because James and I are actually really good friends. So we do disagree on some things, but it is my hope that we will make this debate civil, because when we lose that civility, the real victim is you. Because...
That's
time.
Okay, time. Held the pit.
All right, so we're going to move to the first question. It goes to James. What qualities about your statements drove you to choose them?
My opening statements?
Yes.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
What qualities about your statements drove you to choose them?
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Can you repeat once more? I'm sorry.
Why is it important? What you said.
Oh, all right. What I just said? Okay, sorry about that. So the two themes that I'm going to bring into my presidency for next year is approachability and accountability. I think that over the past 2 years, SGB as a whole has become a more visible body. It's actually been the theme of the past 2 years' boards. I think that we need to take the next step forward. I think that Molly and Charlie did a great job to be a visible enough body on campus. I'm taking small steps to move towards having an approachable body where students are no longer intimidated to come on Tuesday night public meetings and can feel comfortable talking to board members whenever they want to. All three of my initiatives would drive towards creating more accountability and also more approachability for Student Government Board.
Thank you.
Can I rebuttal?
30 seconds.
This idea of a town hall meeting really worries me because if we can't get regular students who aren't coming for the allocations process to our regular Tuesday night meetings, how are we going to get them to come to a meeting where allocations isn't even an idea?
Yeah.
I think that, to really get to the students that are not involved in the process at all, we need to go to where students are. We need to go to the highly trafficked areas of campus, and we can't put these meetings on SGB terms. We've got to come to the students. We can't intimidate them like that with just setting up more meetings.
Can I have a rebuttal on that as well?
No, we got to move to the next question.
Sure.
Okay. John, in your opinion, what are the duties of Student Government Board President outside the university?
The duties of the Student Government Board President outside of the university? Mm-hmm. Can you define outside of the university?
That's under your terms.
Okay. Well, I would say to continue the work that's been started with past President Charlie Shull and current President Marley Stieber with the Pittsburgh Student Governing Council, which is a governing body that's made up of Pitt and numerous other regional colleges to really advocate on the issues that Pittsburgh area students really care about as a conglomerate. So we're not just advocating for University of Pittsburgh issues, we're advocating for issues like when the mayor tries to propose a 1% tax on all City of Pittsburgh student tuitions. That's the kind of issues that affects us as City of Pittsburgh students, not just University of Pittsburgh students. So those are the kind of things that I think outside of the university, the president should advocate for because they do translate very readily into the interests of University of Pittsburgh students.
Yeah, so I get a 30-second rebuttal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. John, you're referring to the past conferences that have been occurring on campus?
No, I'm referring to the Pittsburgh Student Governing Council.
Okay, yeah, all right. So am I allowed to ask questions during rebuttals? Okay. What's been your experience with past conferences, and what are your thoughts on the one that just occurred on the last one on Pitt's campus?
My thoughts on the past conferences, I think they're a good way for us to kind of get to know the other student governing bodies of the other state-related universities in the state. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the last one because I had to go to a retreat from my job, and if I wouldn't have attended, I would have been fired. But in general, on the past conference, I think we need to stop reinventing the wheel on this one. It's very simple. We need to register students to vote, or the state legislature is just going to keep,
Okay, thank
really
you.
not.
That was fine.
Okay.
James, could you please define a formula group, also known as a student life group?
Yeah. Do you want me to name them as well?
Yeah, name 3 and explain how they receive funding.
Okay, so Panther Prince, Pitt Program Council over here, and WPTS are 3 formula groups. Formula groups they get a section of the Student Activities Fund. I think it's 49%. And they, as Nate said last night, as he's in the audience, are groups on campus that are defined as a university as groups that perform a certain duty on campus that no other group can. I tend to agree with that statement as well. I think that Pitt Program Council over here does a fantastic job. As Chaz, we all know Chaz says, no other group can do it like Pitt Program Council. And I think that they're crucial to our student body, and I aim, if I'm president, to have a better relationship between every single formula group on campus.
Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
Do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I agree completely. Pitt Program Council is essential for the life of this university. They do, the huge programming. I know in my experience as Greek life, they've always partnered with us on the larger programs that we do, and I immensely appreciate it. And I also agree that as president, really establishing a relationship between the board members and the Pitt Program Council board members is vital to, really the quality of the program that we try to do and how we help you guys out with your programming as well.
Thank you.
Okay. John, please define a SAG group and similarly name 3 and explain how they receive funding.
Yeah, SAG groups are larger student organization groups or larger student organizations that only receive funding in budget, so they can't submit supplemental requests. Just to name 3 of them, Black Action Society, Interfraternity Council, and the Collegiate Pan-Atlantic Association. These are like the larger groups that act as governing bodies for a larger cross-section of students. So they do some of the larger programming, and oftentimes in conjunction with Pitt Program Council on campus. And they are just as formula groups, they are necessary for the quality of student experience here at Pitt.
Could you please explain what the acronym stands for?
Student Affairs Governance, I believe.
It is the Student Affairs Affiliated Groups.
Do you have a rebuttal?
No, I don't have a rebuttal.
All right. James, can you name 3 student organizations that are not SAG or Student Life and how they receive funding?
Yeah. Okay. I can name a couple. I'll just name the ones that I know that some candidates are running on: Stand, PALS, and I guess Feel Good would be another one. So how they receive funding is either through budget seasons, which they can submit a budget in the spring or the fall, or through supplemental requests, which are seen on Tuesday night public meetings, which we'll have right after this.
Okay. Do you have a rebuttal?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Okay, for this next question, both presidential candidates will have the option of answering. In your opinion, what group receives too much funding and why? And then which group receives too little funding and why? Let's start with John.
Yeah, a group that I think receives too much funding is Panther Prince, just because I've talked with some of their members and they're like, yeah, we really don't know what to do with all the money we have. Which is, it's a good group. They put out the yearbook every year. It's very informative to students, and they do a lot of other, periodical work as well. But when a group, has that kind of response from their own members about the revenue they are receiving, it is kind of troubling from a student government perspective, in that we could be spending this money in other ways. And a group that I think receives too little funding is, I've used this example before, the Pitt Fencing Club. And this is one of the things that I would really try to address as president, really educating these members on the little nuances of the allocations process that, had they known earlier in the semester, they could have got more money out of the Student Activities Fund that other club sports teams that are comparable to them did get throughout the fiscal year.
I'm not going to rebuttal that one. I just have an opinion of my own.
Go ahead.
So something that I've been working on as SGB board member alongside of Alex Zimmerman and Ryan Gaiman. This is to answer the groups that get too much funding. And I think that it's it's not on their, it's really not their problem at all. Since we have an urban setting, I think all club sports spend a tremendous, it's a huge drain on the student activities fee. I think everyone can agree on that one. It's not their fault at all, and I'm looking at possible solutions for finding alternatives, either for more field time on campus or, trying to have a timeshare system with the, current varsity fields as well. So I would say that is a huge drain, the student activities fee. I know that student clubs are not happy about that. And a club that I think receives too little funding, I can't really pinpoint one in particular, but my job as student government board president is to encourage all groups to apply for funding, but to do them right. I think that we have, as John said, a lot of overhead money. If I'm the first day in office, I'm going to make it my goal to make sure that more programs are here on campus. So I think that every single group could receive more funding.
Thank you. James, what will be your presidential management structure for the SGB office, and how will you ensure completion of board and committee projects?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I aim to have bi-weekly meetings with the board. I've talked with board member Alex Zimmerman and possibly introducing a new chair position with the board. Specifically, their role would be to manage the board's projects and also help out with the transition phase. Whenever I was a board member, I know that, for new board members such as Lauren and Matt, but Matt was also on the allocations committee, so maybe he may have known a little bit more. I was very intimidated. I think that you need to have some kind of transitional phase, and it would be crucial for someone such as Alex, just pinpointing him, who has that SGB knowledge to be there for the new incoming board.
John, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, I have a response to your original question, if that's what you want.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think bi-weekly meetings between the president and each board member are essential for the progress of the initiatives that they actually run on. I also discussed this with a few members of the Pitt News writing staff about actually having like a column that's specifically reserved for the progress that student government board members are making on their individual projects. So not only will this actually, let students know what we actually do besides allocations process, but it will also motivate board members to actually, get off their butts and actually, get some of these things accomplished throughout their term. Because if they know
Thank
that...
you, John.
All right.
It's time, sorry.
John, in the past, the board has been in conflict with the Pitt News and other media sources. What do you believe the relationship should be between student government board and various media groups?
Yes, it's a good question, Carrie. I think the relationship should be, one of actual friendship, and we should actually get to know these people who are writing about us before they, write the articles that they do. That being said, I do know the current editor-in-chief very well, Mike McAnoney. I hung out with him a lot this summer. I, played a lot of games of Settlers of Catan with him, so we do know each other pretty well. And I think this is something that I would really emphasize to my board as well, because it's really easier to be interviewed by these people if you actually know them and you know what they're like, you know what kind of questions they're going to ask you, and that's going to avoid a lot of these headaches that come out when articles come out and we're like, well, I didn't say that, So that's really something that I would stress to my board.
James, you have a rebuttal?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 30 seconds again.
Mm-hmm.
My only thing to add on to that, and I agree with him, I think that there needs to be a stronger relationship, would be to also report on, have a stronger emphasis on what's going on with local and state politics as well. I think that, and I'm not going to tell the Pitt News how to do their job. I actually spoke with them last Sunday about this. I, as a student, don't have time to read into the news all the time. I know that many students don't either. They're focused on their grades. I would love to see some kind of relationship alongside the board, such as John just described, but also include things that are going on that are relevant to state issues right now.
Thank you. All right, this is a question for both of you. We're going to start with James. Both presidential candidates have previously spent the past year serving as board members for Student Government Board. What do you feel has been your greatest accomplishment as a board member? What do you feel was your biggest error? And what would you do to change it if you could?
Okay. My biggest accomplishment has been, one, to fulfill one of the projects that I campaigned on last fall, that being the swipe-in system at the residence halls, which I've been working on since my sophomore year with a former board member, David Gow. I also attribute a lot of my success as a board member this year to being very approachable, which is why I'm using that theme for next year. I served on many committees through Student Government Board. Not only that, I feel like I've done a lot of work with those committees that have hopefully, in the transition phase for next year's board, they can carry on and make them stronger. For instance, my work with Emily Hoover with the Food Committee, I think, has been tremendous. My biggest error, I think, this year has been in the beginning part of my board president, or my board term, sorry, not board presidency, has been just not knowing what administrator to talk to outright. And I attribute that by not contacting Molly soon enough, and that was my own error.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, the thing that I'm most proud of working on and really coordinating as a board member was actually during my interim boardship last fall. I have worked on numerous things this past semester and over the summer and this semester, but this past fall when I was an interim board member, I coordinated our student registration drive, which was just before the gubernatorial and senatorial elections. We got over 2,000 students registered to vote. And I remember on voting day, we actually got a call from a past governmental relations chair from Student Government Board who works in Philadelphia now. I was like, you guys really actually came out to the polls and voted this time, and that was great. I mean, it's still, it's not ideal. We still want always more students to register, but this little step that we could take is, it speaks volumes about what these students can do in terms of, really the effect that they can have on the laws that are made in Harrisburg and in Washington, D.C. I'd say that probably the biggest error that I've made is one of the issues that I ran on last year was the publication of the results of OMET professor surveys, and I had my proposal all written up.
Thank you, John.
Sorry.
Okay, John.
Yep.
The Pennsylvania Association of State-Related Students will continue to be an important part of Student Government Board as long as we continue to face cuts in our funding. What are your thoughts about the most recent past conference at Pitt? What was your involvement with the meeting and from the most recent conference? Where do you see Pitt's involvement with this coalition? Excuse me.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I was not able to attend that conference because I had to go to a Pathfinder retreat, and if I wouldn't have attended, I would have been fired, and I need that money, it's my job. But I was at the inaugural conference of the Pennsylvania Association of State-Related Students. I think Pitt's membership in this association is essential for the well-being of our students. It allies us with so many other students across the state, and it gives us a bigger voice in Harrisburg, obviously. And voter registration really is the bottom line for this thing, I think, in terms of Pitt students. That's something that I've been preaching ever since I was an interim board member. It's something that I've been doing. I've really been working closely with Government Relations Chair Kyle Miller to kind of just carry on the Student Vote Coalition that I kind of brought together with the former Government Relations Chair last semester. So that is really what I want to see the Pennsylvania Association of State-Related Students do in the future.
Thank you. James, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, just my vision with PASS would be, and from what I took from the last meeting here at Pitt, would be to form more structure with the unit so it lasts. It's not just going to be a temporary thing that started because the threat of more budget cuts here at Pitt. There is a lot of benefits that can occur from not only the state-related schools, but combining every state school together. And I think that this is a great start. I think that Temple, Lincoln, Penn State pairing up with Pittsburgh on state issues is absolutely crucial, as John said again. So not only
Thank you.
with go ahead. Yep.
Thank you. James,
Yeah. Sorry.
are you satisfied with our current model for student allocations? And if not, is there a way we can improve it?
Yeah, I am satisfied with the changes that current chair Michael Bain just made. If you guys aren't aware, the allocations guidelines, the allocations manual has been changed. I'm actually totally in favor of changing it every single year, and that's because as a new board comes in, they bring in new precedents, they bring in new thinking heads, and who's to say that the next 8 board members think the same way that I do? I think that student clubs need to be immediately aware of what the thinking is of the new board, and some of the things that were introduced this year, for instance, that the new board did, was just having one room lodging for student groups. So that's a precedent that we set that's currently in the allocations manual.
Thank you. John, do you have a 30-second rebuttal?
I mean, the allocations process constantly needs to be revised, in my opinion, because the needs of students are constantly changing. This is just one of the things that I'm addressing with one of my campaign initiatives, actually having board members communicate these specific nuances of the process so students can be less confused when they're actually submitting these requests.
Thank you.
This is for John. Only 19% of students voted last year in student government board elections. This is generally because students don't know about SGB's role on campus. How have you helped students be more aware of SGB's presence, and how have you worked to involve students in SGB committees, projects, and events?
Yep, it's an excellent question, Carrie. Since I was an interim board member, I've consistently been holding open office hours, which is one of the things I'm running on. Students come up to me all the time that have really no relation with Student Government Board and say, how can I get involved? I want to help. And I'm like, cool, we've got these committees, shoot us an email, and they can get involved in that manner. But additionally, this past campaign, last fall, and this current campaign, I've really been spending a lot of hours down in Market Central just talking to students. It's very simple. Conversations that students otherwise, wouldn't get if they're not involved in a student organization. I've tried to expose SGB to as broad a cross-section of students as possible, so we can increase this voter percentage, increase this voter turnout, and really legitimate SGB in the eyes of as many students as possible.
Thank you.
James?
So, yeah, my rebuttal for this would be to take one of the previous points that John made about my campus hall vision. That would be to encourage more students to get involved with SGB. I don't think that we would hear crickets in the audience. I actually think that this would be a good setting for students. The difference between Tuesday night meetings and my Pitt Hall meetings is that Tuesday was reserved for allocations. The open floor section that we have occurs afterwards. Many students don't want to sit through allocations for 45 minutes and then make their announcement here. So the difference is that I would encourage committee work, updates through Student Government Board during my Pitt Hall town meetings, and it would be in a relaxed setting where students would feel comfortable to talk to the board about these issues.
That's time.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to move to questions from the audience.
If anyone I have one submitted question, but if anyone would like to use the mic and submit a question for either James or John, you may take this time to do so. Same rules will apply, a minute to respond, 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions? Yes. Can we get him the mic?
Oh, can I just talk? Am I loud enough?
We have
He's
people
loud.
filming.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a mic
Pathfinder.
here. I know, Seth. I know you can project.
All right. Hi. Is it on?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, guys. So my question is for you, John. You said that your greatest achievement was done as an interim board member. What have you accomplished this year as a serving board member that you're also very proud of?
Yep, it's a good question, Seth. One of the issues that I ran on last fall was the establishment of a Blackboard app for smartphones. I had a meeting with various university administration officials in the beginning of last semester, and this app was actually implemented over the summer. So now it's a lot really easier to access courseweb on your smartphone. And something that I've been working on over the summer, and that I'm glad to see that Halim Genus is running on again as a board member for this upcoming campaign, or this campaign period, is the implementation of actual signs on every bus stop that we have here at Pitt. This has been tried before, but really not in the way that I'm doing it. I called the Department of Public Works over the summer, and I asked them, we really need signs, how can we do this? And we're like, well, we don't really like your idea right now, but if you go around and find different things that we could put signs on that are currently at these bus stops, we could potentially put signs on those. So I spent a couple of days actually just taking pictures of a lot of different bus stops where they had utility poles or something else we can put signs on. I sent the proposal over to the Public Works, and they were like, these look good. We could potentially put signs on these. And we're waiting for the approval of the traffic department right now. But this is really something that I've taken from the ground up, and I really am happy, or I'm looking forward to see Halim Genus, if he gets elected, work even more on this project and get these signs in place.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions in the audience? This is your time. Please ask.
Your time to shine.
No questions? Okay.
Okay, this is for both of you. So I'm really into green and eco-initiative type things. Do you guys have anything you would be willing to implement, or do you have any ideas for how you can try to make Pitt a greener campus?
We'll start with James.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually don't have that big of a green mind. I'm actually really ignorant on how a lot of these processes work. So one of my good friends is Seth Bush, and I really fall back on him and the SSPC committee here. A lot of my good friends on campus also have an eco mind. For instance, Gordon Latterbeck is running on having a green initiative as a board member and implementing new green roofs on campus. So if I was president, I would try to assist Gordon as much as he could with that, but also continue the work with Student Government Board and the SSPC to help them out with any projects they can. I know that they're really stripped for funding right now, so I think that a discussion immediately, and I'm talking about as soon as the new board hits, would be to figure out new ways to bring about new funding to SSPC here on campus.
Thank you. John?
Yep, and I think sustainability should be a huge obligation and initiative of the Student Government Board every year. With the work that the Student Sustainability Projects Committee has done, I really don't think we can ignore it anymore, and I would try to incorporate them into my idea for open office hours so they can get actually more proposals running through their system for funding these projects, because then if they get more proposals, they can implement higher quality projects and we can have more sustainability on campus. And then additionally, with my idea for the reformation of the distribution mechanisms for the collegiate readership program, I would also take this opportunity to hold another kind of PR campaign on not only can you pick up the physical copies of these papers around campus, but we also do have access to the online version of the USA Today and New York Times. So that's just another paperless initiative that students can go green with.
Thank you. To follow up, we're going to go in the same order. Earlier this year, there was an effort to make the environmental chair a standing committee and no longer an ad hoc committee. How did you vote on this amendment? What was your reasoning? And what do you see SGB's role in green initiatives and sustainability on campus?
Who would you like to answer first?
James.
So I voted yes for this, to have the environmental committee be a standing committee with student government board. We've had this discussion as a board. I really think that there was a divide just because I can't attack any board member who voted no, because you want to have enough leniency for the next board to decide what standing committees they have. However, I think that the environmental committee has proved itself as something that should be standing here at Pitt. And I think that because SSBC has all these problems with funding, it's nice to know that they have some form of support year in and year out, that they will be there and that the Green Fund will not be abolished by a new incoming board.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I voted no on this vote, and my reasoning was, I'm fully for sustainability. I love all the green projects that SGB has implemented over the years, but the environmental committee is not essential to just the operational capacity of student government board. I don't think that they're not going to. I don't think they're going to go away as a committee anytime soon. Obviously, Pitt students care about green issues, but I would expect them to perpetuate themselves, as the years carry on. But if you compare them with the elections committee, the judicial committee, and the allocations committee, they really don't do the same kind of things just from an operational standpoint from SGB, regardless of the programming that they implement, which is great.
Thank you. We're going to move back to the audience if there's any other questions. Board Member Riley.
I'm a little worried.
Yeah.
Can we
This is a question for both you guys. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
If you could compare yourself to a U.S. president, who would it be and why?
Start with John.
I love this question. This is such a great question. I love you for asking this, Riley.
Thank you.
Well, I would compare it. Well, I don't want to. I'm a U.S. history major, so I know a lot of U.S. history presidents. I would compare myself with. Well, I think Abraham Lincoln, and I'll tell you why. It's because I'm very tall, and I'm also very clumsy, and he was very clumsy and awkward. He was actually a wrestler and a weightlifter when he was a younger man. And he was also very involved. For the current board members who are serving, me, I'm a big-time storyteller. And Abe Lincoln could whip off a story or a joke like that. He had like 1 million of them in his pocket. So, I do like to do that. And, I don't have a top hat or a beard, but if I could grow a beard, I probably would try to emulate him. Yes.
Thank you. James?
Just to start off, a point of information for John Hazley, since he is the history buff. Did George Washington have wooden teeth, or is that a hoax?
I believe he did, and that's why I didn't smile for the pictures.
That's the one I'd go with, just because everyone says that I have an outrageous smile. I think it'd be pretty nuts to see how I'd look with wooden teeth. But besides that, just on a more serious note, whenever I was decided to run for SGB presidency, I was really in a bind because I was approached to run again as a board member. I think that you really need to step back every once in a while and let new students have an opportunity to run as board. So I decided against running for board. And I think that George Washington had enough knowledge to know that he had to let someone else have the role as presidency here in America too.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience?
One back here.
Yes.
This is for both of you. What are your reasons for running?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
We'll start with John.
My reason for running is, basically the same reason I decided to get involved in SGB as a freshman. I love serving SGB. I love giving back to the students in the capacity that SGB does. And I really want to kind of just create SGB as not just something that's completely irrelevant to undergraduate students' lives, which unfortunately it is for a lot of students. And that's something that I really want to try to combat. Because the way that we're going to do this is by showing students that SGB really can bring about benefits in their lives as Pitt undergraduates and really can, improve their collegiate experience with their time here at Pitt. That's what I want to do with my presidency.
Thank you.
So I share similar visions to that as well. Something that I really want to do for next year, if I'm elected as president, is to have just, I don't want to have student government board be there as a nuisance to groups. What I mean by that is, in past, the SGB board liaison system that we're all very interested in having implemented as SGB was first started that SGB board members would be attending meetings. I think that is a kind of flawed approach for how student government board is here on campus. I just think that you need to make it so we're inviting enough that if students want to come and visit us, we need to offer those opportunities. However, I don't want to, and I don't know if many student groups want us to be there. We've tried this for 2 years now. So again, I'm going to fall back on my two themes: improving accountability with the board members and improving approachability as a whole for student government board.
Thank you.
There was a question in the back.
Given the recent rise in violent crime around campus, what would y'all do as SGB president to combat this trend?
James, why don't you do this first?
Yeah, you hear this all the time. Since we are an urban setting, this is something that I think needs to be addressed. And it's also interesting because a lot of prospective board members this year are running on safety initiatives on campus. For instance, Natalie Rothenberger's running on having a safe walker system. So I know I'm not a very intimidating guy. In fact, I'm somewhat puny. So I would think that this safe walker system, in fact, by pairing a student up with, it doesn't feel large and in charge guy, but just having that assistance there, walking around campus, I think would give that sense of safety and also that sense that, hey, they're walking as a pair, that they may not be someone that we want to meddle with,
Thank you.
Yeah, obviously student safety is a huge concern of mine as well. One of the men who's running on Panther Progress slate, Tyler Walters, unfortunately he's in class right now, he can't be here, wants to bring more lighting to South Oakland just to make students more safe, and areas of South Oakland aren't really that well lit, obviously a good deterrent for crime and violent crime as well. So that's something that I would definitely help him out with, and I would also work to establish really, right from the base, a good relationship between myself and my board and Tim Delaney and the rest of the Pitt Police staff, because they really are, they're here to protect and to serve. We need to, make sure that they are really, on their game 24/7, and that we really do have these issues as students, and they need to be, looking out for our interests as, as their job requires them to do.
Thank you.
Okay, so as a board member, being able to complete projects has been really important to me, but on part of those projects, it's been about connecting students to the correct administrators. I think a lot of the stuff that I've been able to do is because of the relationships that I've built with the necessary administrators. So I want to know what personal relationships, or not even necessarily personal, but what relationships you have with administrators currently, and what you're going to do as president to build those necessary relationships to connect students' issues to the administrators who care.
Start with James.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think that is a huge role with any board member or SGB president. Let's just name a few administrators that I have very close contact with. Would be Dr. Brooks, name one. He's head of Res Life. I worked with him all summer in completing or reshaping the OCC. I also worked with Dr. Earl, who's head of housing, to complete the Swipe-In project. I also worked with Abdu Cole to form a new, stronger food committee here at Pitt. And in addition addition to that, to answer your second question, I have also allowed students to have contact with Sodexo now by, encouraging them to come to these food committees. Just in fact, the MSA in Raheel and Louis just had their, and you have to correct me on what was it? How you say it again? Halal. They just had their halal kickoff event last week. So I think that as a board member, I have provided the opportunity for students to go contact administration, and there are other administrators, just for the sake of time, that I'm not going to mention.
Thank you. I've worked with a bunch of administrators as well.
Oh, we lost the mics. Oh no.
Okay, it's back on. Okay.
We're back.
I've worked with a bunch of administrators as well. Most recently, I've been in conversations with our advisor, Kenyon Bonner, who's the Director of Student Life and Associate Dean of Students, and also I've kind of incorporated, as James mentioned, Dr. Sean Brooks. Just kind of discussing Pitt's current policy on housing transgender students and how we kind of want, both that policy to change and also Pitt to kind of come down on an explicit policy to really address a lot of these issues, a lot of these concerns that that various students are having with the policy. So, as soon as if I were elected, as soon as my board got into office, I would sit them down, much as we did this past term with the allocations committee. I would sit them down with these various administrators who they very likely are going to be working with throughout their entire term, and be like, look, this administrator, this is their department at Pitt. Here's what they're responsible for. Here's who you need to be talking to if you want to be completing these things that you're going to be running on, and just go from there. Because if you establish that relationship as soon as you get in, your likelihood that these board projects are going to be actually completed improves exorbitantly.
Thank you. We have to move on.
Are there? Oh no.
We got. All right.
I have a question about the transgendered policy, actually. How exactly do you plan on, addressing the situation? Because there comes a conflict between how the student identifies themselves as a gender and how the university is going to impose that gender identity onto them. So how would you kind of...
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, this issue was originally brought to my attention and board member Alex Zimmerman's attention by Trisha Doherty, who's sitting in the back. She's the president of Rainbow Alliance. She's a really nice girl too. The current policy that Pitt has in place for housing transgender students really isn't that clear on how they're supposed to be doing it. I've looked through the housing handbook, the student code of conduct, and judicial procedures, and there really isn't anything specifically addressing how these students are to be housed. Now, she did bring to my attention that there was a case where one transgender student wanted to live in a residence hall on a floor with their new gender, and the people that she would have been living with were totally okay with this. Their parents had written letters saying that they approved of this. They think Pitt should do it. They think Pitt should really cater to the specific needs of this student. And it ended up they ended up not being able to live there, even though everyone basically was fine with it. So I think that kind of case-by-case basis really would serve us best, because every one of these issues that comes up is different, and there's really you don't just want to throw a blanket over it and call it fixed. You want to address every specific problem that the students are presenting vis-a-vis the housing policy.
James?
Yeah, just to answer your question, Zoe, I think this is great that students are approaching board members on social issues such as this. I just wish that more board members had open communication with other board members during these issues. For instance, I have every single board member on my food committee. I know this sounds funny, but I have it's to the point where Lauren said, take me off this D-list, James. So I really want to encourage, no matter what happens, that board members really talk these issues out with one another. We meet every single Sunday, and albeit there's football going on now, I say as a joke, but I think that is important for other board members to be in open communication like this, because in last night's debate, I was unfamiliar with this topic at all. It was just, I was kind of, confused by this being a student concern. I think John's doing a good job with this. I just think that having the whole board on the same page would be beneficial.
Thank you, James.
Yes. Oh, we'll go there and then there.
This question is for both of you guys. We've heard a lot about what you would each do if elected president, but unfortunately only one of you will win the election. So what would you do if you weren't elected president to remain involved with the student government board?
the first thing I would do, and I actually have been thinking about this, if I wasn't elected, I would update my Facebook status. Congratulations, James Landrino. I'm proud that you are my president-elect. And I really do feel that way. I'm being completely honest with you right now. James is a huge friend of mine. And I think he would be, I mean, the politician inside of me is kicking myself right now, but I think he would be a great SGB president. If I wasn't elected, I would try to, provide what help I can to the board and James, insofar as they're willing to, accept my help as a past board member, in all my involvement with student government board. So I would be there as much as they wanted me to, but, I wouldn't, try to be, sitting in a cubicle every day and telling them what to do.
I agree with John. If I was not elected as president, I would continue on with some of the board projects that I've started this year, including the creation of the OCC honorary. I really want to make this a legitimate organization. I understand that whenever you say OCC on campus, students cringe. That is not my vision. Once I leave Pitt, I want people to be pumped whenever you say OCC. Beyond that, I would love to see the food committee again. I know I said like probably 4 times now, to continue here on campus. I think that having that open communication with Sodexo is vital to the student body and really encourages students to get involved with student government board as well. But beyond that, agreeing with John, I do agree. I think it's fantastic that we have so many board members coming back in the spring, and it's not a matter of me getting elected or not. I think that we all are mature enough to help out with next year's board in the transition phase. So I'd love to help within that transition phase.
Thank you.
Over there. You've got the mic.
Hey guys, great job. Just quick question. So I know I've heard about your town hall meetings and that's the way you're reaching out, and I've heard about your open house hours and that's how you're reaching out. So tell me this, do you believe that is the responsibility of the board to reach out to student organization leaders, or do you believe it is the responsibility of those leaders to reach out to board? Where do you believe that responsibility
John,
lies?
you need some stuff.
Yeah, I think that responsibility lies primarily with the board and the president. If we don't reach out to these student leaders who are already, frankly, already somewhat disenfranchised in general with student government board, if we don't reach out to them, then we're just going to, fall by the wayside as the time happens. So, we reach out to them. If they don't want anything to do with us, that's fine. We don't have to be forcing SGB down the throats of every student organization. That's not what we want to do. We want to provide the assistance that we can, insofar as we can do it, insofar as they will let us help them, and insofar as we can actually provide tangible benefits to their organizations.
Pooja, to answer your question, I think that the board needs to just be there if students have any concern on campus. And reaching out somewhat is vital as well. You need to show that you're willing to reach out to the student body every once in a while. By no means am I saying that with my SGB liaison system, we'd be emailing student groups every single day and become a nuisance. But just looking back 2 years ago, public meetings used to be held up on the 8th floor. That is not an approachable board right there. So I think that, and as shown in the voter turnout, we've increased already. I hope we increase again this year. In being approachable board, such as moving down to Nordy's place for public meetings, is a small step. I think that there's a ton of other small steps to encourage students to contact the board if they have any relevant issues that SGB board members could combat.
Thank you. This is a question for, unless there's any other questions in the audience.
Yeah. Keep going.
So this question is for both of you. One of the ongoing battles between the university and its students is with the long-term residents of Oakland. What would you say to Oakland's long-term residents to ease their concerns, frustrations, and angers with Pitt students? And then what would you say to Pitt students to help them deal with being more responsible neighbors and then dealing with frustrated landlords and Oakland residents?
I'll answer that one first. I agree with you, Cal. Like this is the delicate balance that we have of being in an urban setting and also college students. Whenever I worked on the alcohol task force, this is something that came up just not too long ago. I know you sit on that as well, so you're well aware. I think that to address this issue head on, it's very difficult because it's not often that you can tie together all the students on campus and give one clear-cut message. And like we said before in this debate, it's also very difficult for students to open up the student government board. We had, 18% of the students voting. So how many people actually do approach student government board? It's my vision to put it on the student leaders on campus to have a strong relationship with the community here, and having an on-campus leadership summit tying together all the student leaders on campus could be on the agenda item. I think that putting it in the hands of the students to carry on that message, having them in one clear-cut place like that would be very effective.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kyle, this is a great concern that you're bringing up of, the various non-student citizens of the Oakland community. In my role as IFC president, we actually had a meeting with some concerned citizens in the area, myself, a number of chapter presidents, and some university administration. Vice Chancellor John Wilds, the Vice Chancellor of Community Relations, John Wilds, was there. And IFC currently has drafted a proposal for kind of establishing some relationships, building some bridges between these students and these citizens, so that they can see that we're not just a bunch of wild, crazy party animals who are really loud on the weekends and litter the campus with all of our stuff. We actually are residents of Oakland, just like them. We do care about this. This is our home. We really don't want to see our relationships just fall by the wayside, because then no one's gonna come out the victor in that respect.
Thank you. We can take one more question from the audience.
Yeah, this is a general question for both of you. Seeing as there are several Hill House or fraternity houses on the Hill that are currently empty, what is your plan for those, and how would you work with existing Greek organizations to either fill or keep those houses full of normal students?
Yeah, John, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah. Out of the many Hill houses on the Hill, there are currently 2 that are not occupied, well, technically 2.5, that are not occupied by Greek students. One of those is Delta Sigma Delta, the dental fraternity, and other students do live there as well. I drafted a proposal over the summer for one of the Greek houses in IFC that doesn't currently have a house on campus to move in there once the new residence hall is constructed. So once those students can move out of that house and into a normal residence hall, because obviously, originally when those houses were built by Pitt, which I believe was in the early 90s, they were all Greek houses. But things happen. Greeks they lose their housing in some circumstances, and so I really want to see these housing doors up on upper campus really return to what they were originally intended for, and that was Greek housing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that John answered that first, because I'm not part of a Greek organization here on campus. I do have a lot of respect for every single one. I think that the reason why so many Greeks love running for student government board is very important. I think it's great because I don't have that knowledge. And like I said in last night's debate, I often fall back on the Greek members of the board, John, Matt, Lauren, and Zach. So if this is a concern by the Greek organizations on campus, I think that, and this is a huge, obviously this is not be an easy move, but I think that it'd have to be a complete board project. So pairing up IFC with the board is not something unreasonable, I don't think. And hopefully there will be a strong relationship between IFC and the board in next year.
Great. Okay, so that's all the time we have for questions. I had one question submitted, and I think that this is also something I'm kind of curious about. So, board, thank you. Managing as president, managing your board, it sounds a lot easier than it is, and you have to understand that the board members are individually elected themselves, and it's important to have a working relationship with them, and obviously, empower them and let them do what they need to do and what they ran on, and assisting them in any way possible. It sounds like both of you have discussed how much you want to do that. One of the questions submitted was, how do you plan to ensure that your boards fulfill their requirements, such as attendance in meetings and all those things that's required of them constitutionally, and also just to help the board function as a whole and work together? And this is a question for both of you because it's not directed to either one in this specific question. So whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thanks, Molly. And I think that you've done a good job this year, personally. Like, I remember, and I'm not just sugarcoating this as a compliment to you, but you really were one of the main reasons why I got involved with the Student Government Board, and I think that you were a great leader. If there's any board concern, you never shut the door on us. So my way of increasing the accountability of the board for next year and also making them a more cohesive unit this sounds silly, but having them go out as a board, have them introduce themselves, make them be friends. I think that we were great friends this year as a whole. In addition to that, being president is a very huge commitment here on campus. Giving some of the responsibilities as president to, let's say, that chief of staff position that I'd hinted towards is not a very unreal idea. It would be great to have someone to call on if there is any board concern, that they could also be in attendance during those bi-weekly meetings that I had said I wish to institute during next year if I'm elected president.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think my answer for one of the previous questions kind of relates to this a little bit, and that actually having a section of the Pitt News where we could, post the updates for board projects would really motivate board members to complete their projects as well. But also in my role as president, just providing board members with as many resources, from the students, from myself, from the administration as possible, would really help just propel them along the way to completing their board projects. And I think, Molly, you've done a great job of that this year. I know you were probably, not probably, you are the busiest student on campus. I know you're constantly in meetings with the higher-ups in administration, shaking hands with Joe Biden and stuff like that. And this is really, really something that I think is very important for the president to do. And I don't know how you did it, but you did a great job of it this past term.
Thank you.
You have to ask you how I did. All right, this question is for John. As president, it is important to work and coordinate with your board. Can you talk about the projects you've worked with other board members, and what was your involvement with collaboration, with collaborative board projects?
Sure. Well, probably the biggest project that I've worked on in collaboration with other board members, as I mentioned last night in the WPTS debate, was the student registration drive. I really reached out to all the other different board members on that, which wasn't, it wasn't this current board, it was the last board. I reached out to all the different board members for their help, just trying to register all their friends to vote, and also asking them what they thought of the best way to actually register the student body at large to vote was. Did they think it was tabling? Did they think class wraps were going to be effective? Should we go to student organizations? Different stuff like that. Really getting their input on a theoretical level, which I think translates well to really any board project that happens, because it's better for board members to kind of incorporate as many viewpoints as possible if the project allows it. And that just, if you really thrive on that synergy that you can create from SGB, it's going to be a lot better.
Thank you.
I'm going to answer this in how I've worked together with the board. I don't want to attack John in any way. I have worked together with many board members this year. I've worked together with Emily Hoover on environmental issues, the food committee. She sat on the academic integrity board with me. I've worked together with Ryan Gaiman on club sports issues. I've also worked together with him on trying to get a more PMAD push during this fall. And I'd say the biggest contributor, the board member I've worked with most this year has been Alex Zimmerman. We worked right off the bat in the spring trying to get an amnesty policy here established at Pitt. He's been one of my best friends this year, and he's also been the clear-cut voice that drives me if I'm acting like a fool on board to really put me in my place. So I think that I have had a working establishment with 3 main board members, but I have remained open to the entirety of the board too if they'd like to help me out with any of my projects.
Thank you. I have a question for both of you. We're going to start with James. What is your opinion on the referendum in this election?
I think it's a great idea. I think that having the opportunity to vote for 8 board members is great, because let's just say a student doesn't like 8 candidates. He or she can still vote for 5 if they want to revert back to the old ways. But it makes sense to me that you'd vote for 8 candidates. I think that choosing 5 out of 8 is a flawed approach, because if I could choose 8 members, I think it'd be great. If I could vote for 8 members, I think that all these board candidates are fantastic, and it's really a disappointment to me that I'm restricted to 5 votes.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I'm also in favor of the referendum, even though I say that with a great deal of compunction, in that it's probably going to create first, second, and third slates, so to speak, for next time around, because you are actually allowed to vote for 8 board members as opposed to 5. But I think the more you can empower students in terms of the elections process, the better. There's a lot of the times in elections you'll see the first 5 or the highest 5 vote getters have a lot of votes, and the next they don't have that many. So if we can create a more equitable distribution of votes received throughout the elections process, I think that's all for the better, not only for SGB, but also for the perspective of students as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to allow you guys the opportunity to ask each other questions. We're going to start with just one. Sorry. We're going to start with you, James.
I'll ask a very open-ended question. I know this is something that in debates you're not supposed to do. Someone told me that earlier tonight. So, John, why why have you wanted to be SGB president? And just, I guess that's it. Just why do you want to be SGB president?
Well, I'm pretty sure this question was asked before tonight, but I really don't have any question prepared either, so mine's probably going to be pretty open-ended as well. But, as I said before, serving students is a passion of mine, and, utilizing SGB for that purpose really, I think, is the most sustainable way to actually, create that benefit in students' lives, create that idea that SGB really can, make your life better as a Pitt student. That's the idea, that's the image that I want to project for SGB in what would be my presidency, and that's really, the fundamental reason that I am running for president.
Thank you. John, do you have a question?
Not really. I mean, how,
Okay.
We're
going to move to closing statements then. And we have 2 minutes, starting with James.
First? Okay. I'm just going to try to keep this as genuine as I could. I got involved with Student Government Board my junior year. I really got roped into it right off the bat. And it has been a very tremendous opportunity for me. Before I was involved with the Student Government Board, I was involved on a student club level. I understand the concerns that student clubs have, whether it be through funding, whether it be through understanding what Student Government Board is. I was laughing at Kyle. Whenever I first got introduced into Student Government Board, I did not know what PPC stood for. So I say this like I'm joking about it, but I think that I've come a long way over this past year. I've led groups before on campus. I know how to lead Student Government Board, and I have a vision on what the board has to do for next year to be an even better board than this year. We've talked about increasing voter turnout for Student Government Board. In order to do that, let's drive back to what my themes have been of the night again: approachability and accountability. Students want to see these projects that are being run on by board members, They want to see, in their minds, they're a promise to the Pitt students. Undoubtedly, you'll hit dead walls. For instance, another crack at me was that I ran on getting towels at the Pete. I hit a dead wall with that one. However, I tried my very hardest to make sure that I ensured whatever I campaigned on would happen at Pitt, and I adapted as a board member. So I will take my experiences as a board member, bring them to SGB presidency, and try to make the most cohesive board that we've seen in Pitt's years. Thank you very much, and hail to Pitt.
Thank you.
All right. I've also been involved in SGB previously since my freshman year. The reason I got involved, I remember, was because a past president, Kevin Morrison, came up to me in Market Central and talked to me about his campaign and what he wanted to do to Pitt. I've been doing the same thing during my presidential campaign, so I can only hope that I'm kind of inspiring that same kind of person to get involved in SGB, who really didn't have any prior experience, any prior exposure to the kind of things that Student Government Board has done. In my experience, as a committee member, as a co-head of committee chair, as an interim board member and as a board member, I've seen a lot of different projects come and go through Student Government Board. I've seen a lot of different ideas. I've seen what works. I've seen what doesn't, in very real terms, and especially in relation to the allocations process. I've really seen, the kind of fundamental changes that need to happen, not only through allocations, but with the operations of the board in general. I believe, in addition, with my experience as president of the Interfraternity Council, when you're leading an organization that comprises almost 800 students, there's a lot of just, fundamental leadership skills that you really do, or you really are able to build up, in that year and in that term. And I think I have. I think I do have that experience, and I would love to translate that when I'm representing not only just Greek students, but University of Pittsburgh students in general, because that is my highest priority as a Pitt student and as a member of Student Government Board. So that's the kind of leadership skills I can bring as your SGB president for 2012, and I would be honored if you would vote for me and, the Panther Pride slate in general. But yeah, that's my closing statement. Thank you, and hail to Pitt.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Is there anything else that happens?
Excuse me?
Is there anything else?
Yeah, are we done?
No, but we do have a public meeting, and you guys are still board members, so. Okay, so I just want to say, again, thank you so much to both of you and for everyone here, and to Carrie and JR. Seriously, give them a round of applause. Such a good job. Thank you all for asking questions, and please remember to vote. Have your voice heard.
Yeah, could you grab my plate?